And please welcome Andy Balch, Vice President, Sales and Marketing, the magazine manager.
Good morning and welcome, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to introduce our first speaker. Although he's already graced the stage, I think 4 or 5 times, makes it a bit redundant. But some things I think are worth repeating. Maybe I'll shed a little light on the perspective of a new member to ABM. A couple things jump out to me first joining. As a new member, our software solutions, which focus primarily on ad sales management, CRM, workflow productions, and billing, it's imperative that we partner with the innovators and the leaders that are in this room. And the one thing that jumps out is the deep level of engagement over the last few months that we've seen in this group, from the retooling of the councils and just the conference itself. And just as Jack Griffin reminded us last night, the simple concept that a lot of success is usually a result of top-down leadership and commitment. And that certainly is the case with what you have here in ABM with your president and CEO, Clark Pettit. As far as some of Clark's background, I think everyone is probably more aware than I of his accomplishments, but the one thing that also stuck out to me in that respect was on a global scale, despite the media vertical that it might be, from music to movies, the one theme is driving transformation. And I don't think you could have a better example of what is needed, what is critical for all of us to succeed, but driving that transformation. So without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, once again, your President and CEO, Clark Pettit.
Thank you. I promise after this you won't see much of me at all, at least up on the stage. Let's go ahead. Why are you here? Why am I here? Why does your business exist? And why does ABM exist? I don't mean to be overly dramatic, but those really are the fundamental questions I've been asking myself in the 18 months that I've been here. And I'll be honest, I'm not going to stand up here and tell you that I have the answers. But I do think I have some recommendations on some questions we should be asking ourselves that are vital to answering that question as individual companies. And I think intuitively that now is a critical time to do that, because I genuinely believe this is a great time to be in B2B. It may not be that obvious to us now, but this feels to me like an inflection point. I'm going to put this in safe zone so that Steve and Andy don't punish me later. This feels to me like one of those times where we don't know it now. We're all concerned. There's lots of turmoil and there's lots of confusion. And let's use the stock market as a metaphor. Some people are buying in and some people are not. And 18 months from now, I think we're going to look back and say, that was a great time to be in the market. But you never see that until 18 months later with hindsight. But I intuitively, and we'll talk about why, I intuitively feel that right now is genuinely a great time to be in B2B. There are so many things that Jack talked about that we're going to talk about here that unlock incredible capabilities, and B2B is at the center of community and the center of the ability to drive this. I genuinely believe, in an English term, it's ours to lose. But before I dive in, I'm going to talk about a fictitious pig farmer magazine in a minute as a metaphor for this journey. This could easily be Pig Farmer Trade Show. This could be Pig Farmer Business Information Commodity Service. Doesn't really matter. I've chosen one metaphor. But before we do that, unfortunately, you have a test. Now, I promise it's a very short test, and I think it's the only test in the entire conference. But I am going to ask that you really concentrate for a minute or two on this test, because at the end of it, I'm going to ask for a raise of hands to see who got which result. Now, if you've seen this test before, you can sit this out. That's fine. But what you're about to see is a short video, and I'd like you to look at the team wearing white and count the number of times they pass the ball. Team wearing white, how many times do they pass the ball? Can you back up? You've passed it. Okay, go forward. And forward one from there.
This is a test of selective attention.
Volume up.
Count how many times the players wearing white pass the basketball. How many passes did you count?
Okay, so show of hands. How many counted 13? Okay, few. How many counted 14? Okay. How many counted 15? Larger majority. 15 is the right answer. How many saw the gorilla? Okay, now, those who saw the gorilla, keep your hands up. Everyone else look around the room. For those who didn't see the gorilla.
How many passes did you count? The correct answer is 15 passes. But did you see the gorilla? This video is from research by Daniel Simons and Christopher Chabris.
87% who see that. Now, in a broader audience, it doesn't work as well for some reason, but 87% of people who see that don't see the gorilla. I didn't see the gorilla the first time I saw this. So what's the point, other than being kind of fun? It's a natural reaction. Our brain is overloaded with information. It's a normal defensive mechanism. We ignore things that we're not concentrating on because if our brain didn't do that, we would be overloaded with the sights and sounds and smells and things that we deal with. It's just how our brains work. And so my question is it possible that we are viewing our businesses in a way that we don't see the gorillas that are right in front of us, opportunities that are right in front of us, that the competition, which I would argue is not inside this room, will see. They'll naturally see it, because they're not busy counting and managing all the balls that we've always been doing. They're not focusing in the way that we are in a very trained way to look at our business. And what does this have to do with pig farmers? We'll get to the pork in a minute. I think the challenge with this, quite frankly, is the way that we're trained to look at businesses. This will be a little dry for a moment, but bear with me. Traditional kind of business view is to say, all right, the core of what I do, what's in the center of the circle, is my product, my service, my unique selling proposition, my features and functions and things that allow me to do something different than anyone else did. And then surrounding that are various enabling strengths, things that are important and they help drive that unique selling proposition, but they're not critical, they're not the core of what you do. And surrounding that are supporting activities, which are options for outsourcing, variabilizing costs, things like that. They're necessary evils, but they aren't necessarily the real heart of what we do. And that's the traditional way I think most people look at their businesses and are trained to. And so if we're going to look at this fictitious pig farmer magazine, one model would say, well, content in journalism and advertising, and even if it's magazine online, it's the same thing. And you surround that with some very important supporting strengths, editorial, circulation, ad sales, for example. And then there are additional things on the outside, production, printing, IT support, etc., that we all have to have in one form or another, but maybe we would outsource them. And I think of businesses as basically all having fundamentally four functions, right? First of all, there's R&D. What is my product? Where does it need to evolve? What's my service? How do I then develop that product over some sort of a roadmap to keep it viable and evolving in the marketplace? How do I go out in marketing? How do I create and find and develop the audience that needs it? And sales. And so in this model, we might say, well, R&D is really journalism, development of ideas, Product development is editorial. Marketing in this model is really audience development. I would argue it is creation of a product and then finding people to which it's relevant. It's not creating a market and creating demand. It's just a different way of looking at marketing, and the sales is mostly ad sales in this model. The problem with this whole view, in my opinion, is where's the beef? Where's the pig farmer? If this is Pig Farmer Magazine, and that's how we view our business, and that's what's core to it, the core audience, which we're all about, isn't on that slide. It's somewhere buried under there, in journalism, etc., but it's not highly centered. And if we define our businesses by what we do, if I'm all about the what, I'm all about content journalism, I'm all about exhibitions, I'm an exhibition company, I hear that from a lot of people, I'm a business information company, I'm a media company, that's what I do, that's my reason for being here, then it's a challenging evolution, because you look at that and you say, well, it's under threat. There's fragmentation of access for our audience to get content, information, face-to-face, etc. There are multiple different channels. They're self-serving. We've lost control. Marketers are going direct. We're being disintermediated. And the current market intelligence, which I'll touch on some more in a minute, but in a traditional magazine world or in a cert kind of world, that's who did my product go to? That level, and even in the digital world, how many uniques, what's the size of my online audience? I would argue these are not yet sufficient depth of market intelligence in today's world. They were in the past, and they aren't now. Similar issues for business information and events. I would argue that the problem is that's a boring and wrong way to look at our business. And for me, that's not how I intuitively looked at it, because I didn't come from this business. So I started with just a completely different perspective. You may know of an author named Simon Sinek, who, among other things, wrote a book called Start With Why. He's a great presenter. He's commonly known. He's no genius, and this is not a genius model. It's just a really simple way of thinking about businesses differently, and I think it's kind of compelling. What Simon Sinek says is, start with why. The center of what you do is why your business is here, and that people buy why your business and why your products exist, not what they are, not the features and the functions, but what the purpose is, what you're trying to achieve in life as a business. And then surrounding that is how you do it. And the last thing in the circle is what the individual product is. That's the least important in this model. So let's just take a minute and watch a short extract from Simon at a recent TED conference.
But the inspired leaders and the inspired organizations, regardless of their size, regardless of their industry, all think, act, and communicate from the inside out. Let me give you an example. I use Apple because they're easy to understand and everybody gets it. If Apple were like everyone else, a marketing message from them might sound like this. We make great computers. They're beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. Want to buy one? Meh. And that's how most of us communicate. That's how most marketing is done, that's how most sales is done, and that's how most of us communicate interpersonally. We say what we do, we say how we're different or how we're better, and we expect some sort of behavior, a purchase, a vote, something like that. Here's our new law firm. We have the best lawyers with the biggest clients. We have, we always perform for our clients, do business with us. Here's our new car. It gets great gas mileage. It has, leather seats. Buy our car. But it's uninspiring. Here's how Apple actually communicates. Everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. We just happen to make great computers. Want to buy one? Totally different, right? You're ready to buy a computer from me. All I did was reverse the order of the information. People don't buy what you do, people buy why you do it. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. This explains why every single person in this room is perfectly comfortable buying a computer from Apple. But we're also perfectly comfortable buying an MP3 player from Apple, or a phone from Apple, or a DVR from Apple. But as I said before, Apple's just a computer company. There's nothing that distinguishes them structurally from any of their competitors. Their competitors are all equally qualified to make all of these products. In fact, they tried. A few years ago, Gateway came out with flat-screen TVs. They're eminently qualified to make flat-screen TVs. They've been making flat-screen monitors for years. Nobody bought one. Dell came out with MP3 players and PDAs. And they make great quality products, and they can make perfectly well-designed products, and nobody bought one. In fact, talking about it now, we can't even imagine buying an MP3 player from Dell. Why would you buy an MP3 player from a computer company? But we do it every day. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. The goal is not to do business with everybody who needs what you have. The goal is to do business with people who believe what you believe.
So if I was in the audience right now, I might be thinking, great, all I need to do is be as successful as the largest company on the planet, and everything's pretty easy to do. So it's obviously easy to pick Apple and say, ooh, just be like Apple, and we'll all be massively successful. I get that. But Apple wasn't always like that. Apple went through some seriously dark periods. So did Pixar. And there were complete reinventions of those businesses driven by Steve Jobs, fundamentally because he got every single person in that company to understand and agree why they were there. And by doing that, every single person in the company is part of moving the company forward. Decisions are made faster. What products to launch are made faster. There is a context that everyone understands. So let's talk about just a couple of other examples before we come back to the pork. Some well-known companies. So Honda. Most people think, yeah, Honda cars. We all know Honda cars. It's not Honda cars. It's Honda Motor Company. That's the name of their company. They started building gasoline engines. That's where they came from. Reliable, always starting, dependable, long-living gasoline engines. That's what they built. And eventually they said, well, why don't we build the whole car? But they started with the engine. And every person to the lowest man on the lowest woman on the assembly line knows they're a motor company and that's what they're about. And so someone can say, I've got a product idea. Why don't we move into this new area? And they understand the context and they're working. So Honda makes cars. Honda makes motorcycles. Honda also makes weed whackers. Honda's audience strategy, in our terms, is also driven by this. Honda's making a mid-price point, very reliable product. They're not making a cross-product brand play. They're not trying to say, you're going to be so impressed with your Honda car, you're going to buy the Honda Weed Whacker. They're going after weed whacker people on a value proposition, and they're going after car people on a value proposition. So their audience strategy and their product strategy is driven by this. And so Honda also makes lawnmowers. They don't make bicycles. Despite this man's attempt to fill his bicycle with gasoline, there's no engine. Nobody in Honda would ever propose or think or waste time experimenting and doing research on whether they should launch a bicycle. It doesn't fit with their fundamental purpose. Let's look at one more. BMW, the ultimate driving machine. Now, these are not mission statements. This is not we drive shareholder value through customer satisfaction and compelling products. They're crap that we could all say and apply to any single company and it wouldn't make any difference. These are fundamental to how they think and how their DNA works. So BMW is an experience company. They're a premium experience company. You're going to love driving this thing. That's what they're all about. And so they make cars. They're a little cooler than the Honda cars, a little more premium product, but they make cars. Why? Because you can have an ultimate driving experience. And they also make very cool motorcycles, which are absolutely an ultimate driving experience. And of course, they make bicycles. Why? Because you can have an ultimate driving experience on a bicycle. It's completely logical for them to go into that product. In addition to that, thereafter, their audience strategy is driven by this. It's a premium product. They want you to love the brand. They want you to have everything BMW in your entire life. When you buy a BMW, they send you a BMW pen on your one-year anniversary to celebrate the fact that you are now a one-year car owner. I mean, this is culture. And when you go into the BMW dealership, the motorcycles are there, the bicycles are there, the bags, all the other kind of stuff is there. They're trying to get you one person to buy everything BMW across all of your driving experiences. A very different strategy, all driven by a really clear fundamental why as to why they're there. They do not make lawnmowers, because despite this person's apparent glee, you cannot have an ultimate driving experience on a lawnmower. And no one in BMW would ever say, let's build a lawnmower. They don't spend any time on market research on lawnmowers. It doesn't fit their fundamental purpose. And we could go on. Why does Sharp make LCD TVs and not plasma screens? Why does Mercedes make trucks, big industrial trucks, and BMW doesn't? Would never think of it. Aren't Mercedes and BMW equivalent competitors? No, they're completely different companies. And a really important one, why did Sony, who had motion picture, music content, television content, consumer devices, networking, software, all in one corporation, fail to build the iPod and the iPad, and are soon to fail to build the iTV, which Apple is, I guarantee you, going to release soon, and it will be a very compelling product. Apple had none of this. They were only a computer company. They managed to pull all of the software, iTunes, and all the individual pieces apart and build a consumer product with none of the capabilities. And Sony, to this day, still can't compete. Why? Sony's a what company? I know Sony very well. Sony Corporation is a what company? They move into other markets. Yeah, there's a little bit of, well, maybe there's theoretically synergy, but it's mostly a revenue play. We got to grow. That looks like a business that grows. Let's get into that business. And each silo is run that way. And sometimes if something's declining, this is declining, let's find something that's growing. Apple works totally differently. They're driven by one common purpose. So back to the pig farmer. It's my premise, and again, I'm only 16 or 18 months into this industry, so I have no idea if this is true, but I'll bet you it is. 100 and some odd years ago, when Fichte's Pig Farmer Magazine or Pig Farmer Trade Show or Pig Farmer Business Information Service was launched, somebody said, Bill, Claudia, you know more about pig farmers than anybody I've ever met. You should launch a magazine. In today's world, we'd say website. I can't believe what they said was, you know more about magazines than anybody I've ever met. You should launch one. Pick an audience, doesn't really matter. That's not how it started. It had to start because somebody knew and loved pig farmers. And it was the passion and the knowledge of that launched the product. But I think over time, we've all become product companies. We've become what companies? I'm an exhibition business. I'm a business information business. I'm a media company. And I think in today's world, if you were to apply the why, what, and how model, I would say this is about compelling interaction and market intelligence. And it used to be a long time ago that the most effective way to do that was a magazine or a trade show. Today's world, it's more complex to do that. But it's still the fundamental thing. How do I create compelling interaction and intelligence with that audience? And if that's what your goal is, if the center of your why, and I'm not saying it's only that, because your why is going to be much more specific, but it's got to be, in my mind, based in the customer. And if it is, then you step back and think, well, what are the ways, what are the products, what are the whats that I might use in order to accomplish that? Print, web, tablets, events, business information. But in addition, why not software? Why not e-commerce? Why not workflow? Why not education and training? Why not consulting? And along with that, there's an explosion of business models. Obviously, ad-supported, as Jack talked about, is going through an evolution. I believe he's right about that bifurcation into kind of mass media push and highly specialized, so accurate that it's almost entertainment, it's almost something you would pay for kind of advertising. But lead gen, digital-only paid content, combining subscription in digital and print in order to save your print magazines. Corporate licensing, membership, sponsorship, obviously attendance and exhibition in the exhibition space, e-commerce, but also software as a service, social media, etc. Marketing as a service. And so if you look at the four functions, the four kind of fundamental things of what we do, there is an evolution in this. R&D needs to be, in this world, about customer requirements. That's both upstream to the marketer and downstream to the audience. We had the same issue in music and motion picture. We had music artists and we had retail and consumers on one end, and you had to serve both audiences. I view the marketer as an audience also, but I fundamentally, as a customer also, but I fundamentally believe it starts with the readership audience, the audience you're trying to reach and gain knowledge about. And then product development becomes more product development and roadmaps and evolution of those. And marketing now has to handle product marketing and service marketing and brand marketing. Because if you think of the why, one of the complex issues in this is, what is my brand? Is it the magazine brand? Is it the online brand? The magazine brand didn't translate to online. Is it my corporate brand? Is it group brands? If you're clear on the why, my premise is the brand strategy follows it. It should be enforcing that. So if you're going to use an incredibly clever social media tool, marketing in a box, and that's viable to a whole bunch of different audiences, then that product is the brand because you're going to go across lots of different audiences. If you're going to be much more specialized in one particular area like Hanley Wood and you're going to move into audiences that are next door, concrete from construction, then you have a different branding strategy. But it's driven by that clarity of what your fundamental reason is. And then ultimately, selling obviously evolves into product and consultative selling, et cetera. So that's a bit generic, and I get that. So what are we supposed to do with this? Like I said, I'm not going to pretend I have the answer to what is your why. But I fundamentally think that the way that you figure it out, the way that we go through this process, is to ask the pig farmer. You ask your audience. You start with that. You go and say, okay, fictitious pig farmer, what are you dealing with? What's going on in your world? And he says, I've got commodity information, I've got hedging funds and all these issues, I've got legislation, factory farming is now under threat, I've got to completely change my model, I've got breeding issues, I've got genetic issues, I've got hormones that I've got to figure out, I've got advice on that, I've got this great social media access, but now I've got a new problem. I ask a question to my social media network and I get 3 different answers. I did X, I did Y, I did Z. Where's my voice of record? Where's the person that's helping me moderate this? Where's the brand that's giving me some quality? And how to face-to-face, I'm overwhelmed. I would argue that we tend to look at this and say, well, we're under threat because he has so many opportunities now. But think of your own selves in your own lives. Do you feel like you have an infinite number of opportunities now? Or do you feel like you're overwhelmed with newsletters and conferences and information and access? And you are now having to be your own voice of record. You have to sort out your own world because you're overwhelmed with all the options. That, to me, is the opportunity here. Because, yes, all these new channels open up ways for us to be disintermediated, but they also create a demand for someone to come in and put order to some of the chaos. What do I want as a pig farmer? I want a strong, reliable market intelligence brand that gives me a voice of record that sits across as many of these as possible. And in the process, I want a voice too. That's one of the great things about the new world. So the audience gets a voice. So if we're going to do this, we have to let go of the reins. We have to be at the center of this universe, but it's not something we're going to control. But things like moderated social media solutions are absolutely, to me, in the realm of the what's of what we should be looking at. Trying to be at the center of what their audience's issues are. And then the other half of your why is we can't do all of it. We're not Apple. We don't have the resources to just go out and build an iPod and an iPad and every other device known to man. We're not that. None of us are that large. The biggest B2B company in the world isn't that large. So we have to pick a narrower why, a really fundamental thing that defines what your business is about. So the other half of that, I think, is looking at your own capabilities, your own brand strength, your marketer relationships, skill sets, DNA. So if you think of the fundamental purpose is to create community out of that audience, and you've got someone who happens to have a strong love for social media or a strong love for some other product in there, you have an evangelist. It's a perfectly viable product. Let them run with it. And look at what your competition is doing. But I think if you ask yourselves the questions, what is the marketer, what does the audience really need across everything, not just our traditional businesses, but across that whole space, and where do I have the capability of creating a unique and compelling why that I can get my entire team focused on, I think you have something that's compelling and moves forward. And if you have that, then it becomes clear what products you're going to launch and what products you're not going to launch and what the obvious evolution of audience is. Now, again, I know this is a bit generic, so let me just for a moment talk about how this evolved in ABM. I'm a mini-me. I don't mean to compare myself to your businesses because I have a really, really simple life compared to the complexity you're all dealing with. But it's a similar business. I have a deep vertical business audience. I need to reach it through multiple channels. I've got way more than I can possibly execute on. I'm stuck at a certain size, and I've got to figure out how to do as much of this as possible. And I don't know where to start, and I can't be everything to everyone. And so the first thing that I did was I went out and talked to everyone. But for those of you who were part of that, I didn't come out and say, what should ABM do? I came out and said, what's going on in your business? Where are you going? What are the issues you're dealing with? What are the questions you're trying to answer? What are the evolution of the business models? Where do you think you're going? What are the things that you need? How do I get into your head and understand that? And I came back and said, wow, I've got a real problem. We're a small association, but everybody in this room is going different directions. Business information, events, paid content, lead gen. So I have an audience that needs me to cover everything in the entire B2B space at great depth, and I'm not big enough to do it. But I know that's why I'm here. I'm here to do that and protect and defend and promote it. And if I don't cover all of it, I have no reason for existence. See, I think strategy is not so much to tell you where you need to be in 10 years. Strategy for me is the ability to say, this is the direction we're going in, and when we come across the first hurdle, the natural human nature is to say, wow, this is tough. Maybe the strategy's wrong. Let's try this one. And you don't go over the hurdle. Instead, you go in a different direction, and you thrash. And you try this one, and you try this one, and you try this one, and you try this one. And hopefully, one of them works, and you accidentally get something successful, and you kill the ones that didn't, and you move on. The point of strategy is to say, no, we're going to overcome that hurdle. Apple went through huge problems. They had unbelievable aspirations, but they knew what they were going to do, and they kept at it until they finished it. That's the value of it. It's not so much getting the answer. It's creating that motivating, compelling factor that drives you forward. So when we were clear, this is what we have to do, we then said, all right, we've got to build strategic alliances. We can't possibly cover this ourselves. And there was a lot of discussion of, well, doesn't that cannibalize and doesn't dilute? Yes, probably. I don't really know, but I just know it's the right strategy. I know it's the right thing to do for the industry, and the rest of it will sort out. And from that strategy came products. Well, then we're going to have metrics across the space, and we have to have partnerships in that space. But once we did all that, and we said, okay, well, now we've got education and training, and we're covering this entire space, this is very relevant to marketing services businesses, to pure events businesses, to business information businesses. It's very relevant to people who aren't in my current audience because my current audience needs it, but now I have something that's relevant to the rest. So my audience grew not because we started with, how do we make more money? How do I replace existing revenues with new revenues? Because if that's our strategy, why don't we just build widgets? It was a very driven by what is our purpose and reason for existence that drove us to be able to identify additional audiences. And then that circle continues. So why even waste time thinking through this? Because as I said before, I genuinely, honestly believe this is a great time to be in B2B. I'm going to channel Tom Kemp for a moment and Patton-esque stomp. This is a great time to be in B2B. It absolutely is. The economy is stabilizing, knock on wood. Most of the restructuring is behind us for now. I know we've kicked some cans down the road, but for now. But more important, technologies are stabilizing. Standards are emerging. Costs are dropping. This is no longer a suite of capabilities that only the Googles of the world or only the Apples of the world can afford to do. 6 years ago, if you wanted to get social media expertise, we didn't even know what search engine optimization and SMO was, and we didn't know how to get the talent. Now you can get an intern with a social media degree for free. 6 years ago, it was hard to find any vendors that can help. Now we have too many vendors, and we have to rationalize which ones do we really want to work with. That's an opportunity. There are business models that are proven, and importantly, marketers still need solutions to reach our audiences. That chaos and confusion that the pig farmer is dealing with, the marketer's got the same problem. We're saying, well, they can now go direct. But I guarantee you the marketer conversation is, oh, man, I'm doing this and this and this. These are not my core strengths. The reason I believe marketers are doing it is because they don't see anyone that can help them. I don't believe it's entirely just disintermediation. It's, I'll do it myself. And it's the natural evolution that we always go through at this intersection of technology meets media and causes chaos. It's like great new opportunities. I'm going to do these things. I'm going to launch them. Next thing you know, in music, we're doing a whole bunch of digital supply chain stuff that's costing a huge amount of money. And we suddenly think this isn't our core. Why are we doing this? Because we just spent $25 million building it. Well, okay, now we need to variabilize that cost base. We need to get out of this. It's not the business that we're in. It's a natural evolution. I think marketers are going through the same thing. Agencies have not yet filled that gap. And as we said before, I think audiences need structure and voice of record more than ever before. It's the age of community, which has always been B2B's strength. As Jack said before, we have an explosion of capabilities of creating community, and people are naturally gravitating toward it. And that is what B2B has always been about. It's always been about market intelligence. So, takeaways. I would posit that we're not in the exhibition business. We're not in the media business. We're not in the business information business. We're in, my words for now, the audience intelligence and access business. We're in fundamentally enabling and being a part of that community, building the knowledge about it, and then monetizing that, both upstream and downstream. So I'll give you my thoughts on 5 takeaways from this way of thinking. Number 1, let nerd passion drive your culture. All started off. I'm Clark Pettit. I am a nerd. You should all follow along. If you're in B2B, you got to have some nerdy side. I mean, come on. We've got plastics modeling engineering magazine. We've got African bee farmers. I mean, this is nerdy stuff. Long-form content to us is like 27 pages on the latest trucking laws. This is great. Let that be your culture. Part of the why is giving people want to join something that has purpose and meaning. The purpose and meaning is we're all about firemen. We're going to have everything having to do with firemen. We're all about the legal. We're the center of the legal universe. Every lawyer, every judge, everybody in this universe is in this. And when you're trying to bring in social media people, you don't want the one who's saying, well, why should I join you rather than Google? You should join Google. You should join Facebook. You want the one that says, I don't want to be the biggest social media nerd on the planet. I kind of want to have a little business sense to it. I have other passions in life. Terrific. You have the right skills. You got a general attitude. Get involved with our passion. It's an organizing principle. Now, that brings up a problem of, okay, now I've got some new talents that I've only got one of, and how do I give them a career path? I think we have to solve that collectively. The Chief Digital Officer Council, the Digital Transformation Initiative is an example of that. But if we've all got social media experts and they need a network and the group of people that know all about social media so they can have their thing, then as a community, let's create that. On your own, through committees and councils, there's a number of ways to do that. But they can get that professional development, that detailed stuff as a community. What they want to get from your industry is a passion and a reason to be there. Number 2, you'll hear this throughout the rest of the couple of days, all roads lead to data. Anything we're doing with customers, we want to be doing because we're gathering, measuring, and turning that data into knowledge and into decision making. Any interaction that we're doing with a customer should be for the purposes of aggregating information about that. And we should be reaching out to the customers through every technique, and we're going to talk a lot about this in the next day and a half. But DITLOC, Day in the Life of the Customer, anything that is customer-centric, not just customer-friendly, but genuinely saying, I want to be in the center of your world and understand your entire range of what the issues are, because I could deliver any product that's within my realm of capability. And that allows us to be both predictive and reactive. Asking the question of, what is your issue? Not what do you need, not what media do you need or what data do you need, but why do you need it? What's the issue you're trying to figure out so that I can help you answer the question and realize that I can provide you something that you don't even know you need yet. Because as media companies, we have a broader view. Share the crap. My vision of the B2B company of the future is an almost virtual company. If it's not about that fundamental why, if it's not about the interaction with the audience and the most core critical things, then it ought to be something that you're trying to variabilize the cost of and not manage as possible. If it's not about an audience, if it's not about intelligence, if it's not about trying to connect that marketer to that audience, if it's about the underlying pieces, especially for small to medium-sized businesses, we should be sharing it. The competition is not in this room. I spent 10 years in music, and we spent the whole 10 years fighting with each other. I'm not going to let your empire beat my empire. I'm not going to share mine with yours. And we did that whole thing until we looked up and went, oh, crap, we're barely in the business anymore. We fought each other until we were gone. We are not the competition. The competition is out there. There are opportunities to share through, again, we can do it through committees and councils, you can do it on your own, but we can come up with standard things for data cleansing services and iPad apps and anything else that we need. If there's 17 companies in this room that need to do something, why don't we come up with one common one if it's not part of that core competitive distinction? Make fact-based decisions. It's pretty hard to look at a full range of all those opportunities and all those different business models and decide which one we're going to chase. So we are committed to giving you all the benchmarks and best practices, emerging standards, et cetera, that we possibly can. We're launching an initiative on the effectiveness of B2B across different channels, which you can use in discussion with marketers and we can use in discussion with government. But fundamentally, if you need data, if you need information, let us know what it is you need and we'll help it gather it, because that combination of a compelling why and a compelling purpose plus facts to support it allows fast progress. And last one, the whole point of this, in my mind, is to unlock value. That clarity that allows everybody to be rowing forward, everyone to generate product ideas, everyone at the next levels down to be clear on what your purpose is and to be part of that rowing forward, leads to faster progress and solutions. It's a motivator for retaining and attracting people. It's compelling. People want to be part of something that matters. Faster decisions, brand strategy is unlocked. And important point, market valuation. A lot of people challenge me on this. Look, some of us are going to be looking at an exit, period, end of story, and it's very simple. We're going to look at the revenues, we're going to look at the margins, we're going to look across the different lines, we're going to apply a multiple, we're going to come up with a number, and that's it. And the only variable in that whole thing is really what multiple we can argue. I would argue that there is any market valuation needs to look at what the viable future earning potential is. And if you have a clear and compelling why that says, here are 3 other audiences that we are not in that we can go to. Here are 4 other products that we can launch. Here's why we can launch them. Here's our proven track record and things. And here's the clarity that shows why that is absolutely a logical sequitur for us to go for. Gives you tremendous power to say, yes, this growth curve is achievable because this strategy, this clarity of why allows us to do it. This does unlock value. It's not just backwards numbers. It's absolutely about go forward. It helps identify products and markets and elements more effectively. Really important, less thrash. I'm going to take a guess that just about everybody in here is dealing with a massive amount of thrash. We are. We launched some things, they didn't work. It's the risk. It's the biggest risk. The thrash plus thinking that we in the room are the competitors is the biggest risk to forward progress. Having that clarity allows you to start to say, we're going to experiment with this and we're not going to experiment with that. Gives you better defensive market position. And again, the whole point is it unlocks forward movement if you can make this clear and compelling. And that is a customer-driven future. Just ask the pig. He was there the whole time.
That's all, folks.
Thank you.